Well, joining me now is Emeritus Professor of Earth Sciences, Ian Plimer. Ian, we've been promised the green dream, but is it a mirage?
Here they come again, for your money. Firstly, it was wind, then it was solar, now they put the two together and it's hydrogen. And what they're trying to do is to skin us alive forever. Now, your previous segment on education reminded me of politicians who are totally and absolutely scientifically illiterate. It's equivalent to a politician not being able to read or write. So let me say a few things for an illiterate politician. You need electricity to make hydrogen, and you have losses when you do that. And then with the hydrogen, you need to make electricity. Again, you have losses. And so you get about 30% of the energy by that process, the rest gets dispersed. Unless legislation can change the laws of thermodynamics, you are in a loss situation. Loss because we taxpayers get skinned alive, loss because we redistribute energy, and loss because we cannot replace that energy. This madness was tried 100 years ago. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. Now, if we look at planet Earth from space, we can see a number of really interesting things. Firstly, if you squint and look very hard, you actually can't see that the planet's got a gender, yet we call the planet a female, her. The second thing is when you look and you've got spectroscopic eyes, you can actually see hydrogen is leaking out of the planet. You cannot hold hydrogen. It leaks from the core of the Earth, through the mantle, through the crust and into space. You cannot hold hydrogen in pipelines or in steel containers. So if you want to make hydrogen, you lose a huge amount of energy doing it. Then you've got to compress it, only 700 times atmospheric pressure, and that requires a huge amount of energy. Then you've got to liquefy it down to minus 283 degrees Celsius. That requires a huge amount of energy. And then you've got to transport this hydrogen in a truck or a pipeline, and that is a mobile bomb. That hydrogen will leak out through the steel in pipelines or in a truck, just the same as it leaks out from the Earth. That hydrogen weakens the steel, and so what have you got? You have got a bomb waiting to go off. Hydrogen is well known to be extremely explosive, and when it explodes, it puts the most powerful greenhouse gas back into the atmosphere, and that gas is water vapour.
Ian, for the benefit of myself and our viewers, I've read a lot about hydrogen fuel cells, and apparently there are hydrogen filling stations in some states in America, like in California. Do these have the same inherent flaws, or is there a different technology than perhaps what you're talking about?
A slightly different technology, but the same inherent flaws are there. For those of you that want to do a web search, go and call up the explosion at a Norwegian hydrogen fueling station. It is fabulous. It's just, there's enormous explosion because of hydrogen leaking and eventually igniting. Yes, you can store hydrogen in fuel cells, incredibly expensive and incredibly dangerous. We have extremely good technology now where we can convert fossilised sunlight into energy, and that fossilised sunlight is called coal. We have extremely good technology to convert compressed energy in a big atom like uranium into steam, which then goes into electricity. That's been around for a long time. We've had hydrogen around for a long time. It still hasn't worked. So if you have massive subsidies and you have people that live in cities, then hydrogen is used by woke people. I'd much rather be living next door to a nuclear reactor than a hydrogen refuelling station. It's far safer.
That was actually going to be my next question. The NIMBYs will, of course, be saying, I don't want it in my backyard because of the potential or inherent risks. But what about if you're driving around in a vehicle, a hydrogen-powered vehicle, for example, in the event of an accident or a collision? There would be a heightened risk there too, I would presume.
Oh, we have the DNA skills now to identify a person from a tiny little piece of meat. And that's what would be left if you have an accident in a hydrogen-driven vehicle. This is
I shouldn't be laughing.
Right.
I shouldn't be laughing, Ian, but you've got away with words, that's for sure. Tell me this, though. How are so many people throwing money into this, just like they did with wind and solar, and government? I understand the Australian government has put $400 million in already into claiming this is going to be the future of Australia's energy independence.
Well, the spruikers can see something that's going to make them a lot of money. Firstly, it's subsidised. Secondly, they sign really long contracts, which they did for wind and solar. And thirdly, they know that politicians are absolutely, totally scientifically illiterate. They know the bureaucrats are generally green and have got barriers to push and are unelected and are sending us broke and don't have to worry about losing a job because they've got one forever. So they can see a big fish waiting to catch. This has got nothing to do with green energy. This has got nothing to do with the environment. It's to do with the spruikers skinning us alive. They've done it with wind, they've done it with solar, now they're doing it again. And my view on this is beware of people trying to sell us what they call new technology and saying, oh, the old technology's hopeless. If we were to throw out old technology, we wouldn't use the wheel. The best technology we've got for generating energy is where we use compressed energy in coal or in a heavy atom like uranium and convert that into steam, which then drives turbines, which then gives us electricity. That, for more than 100 years, has been the most efficient form of energy. It still is. If we had no subsidies, we would be still running on coal, uranium and, in peak times, gas.
Yeah, Ian, one of Australia's great competitive advantages has been a low cost of power, a reliable energy grid, and that's been fuelled by coal, clean coal basically, cleanest in the world. Now the government keeps making some sort of murmurs about maybe allowing a nuclear industry here. My position is they should remove the prohibitions on it, and if someone wants to fund a nuclear industry, if someone wants to do it with government consent but not taxpayers' money, we should be opening ourselves to it. Don't we have one of the world's greatest uranium resources anywhere, and yet we're allowed to export it but we're not allowed to use it?
Well, Cory, it's even worse than that. We have our wind turbines made in China. We have our solar panels made in China. And by us having wind and solar electricity is sending us broke. So China doesn't even need to invade us. We're doing it to ourselves. Then if we have hydrogen, we do it again to ourselves. And by not using this concentrated energy in black coal and in uranium, we are again sending ourselves broke. We cannot, in a country where wages are high, where our industrial legislation makes it very difficult to do anything, where we have huge amounts of concentrated energy which we export, we cannot ignore using that energy. We are the only G20 country that doesn't generate nuclear electricity. We could control the world's uranium, the same as Saudi used to control oil, and that is mine it, make the yellow cake, make fuel rods which we lease out, bring them back, clean them up, lease them out again, bring them back, clean them up. And there we set up a high speciality industry whereby we employ engineers, scientists and very skilled tradespeople to run this industry. We don't therefore try to compete with manufacturing industries in Asia where people get paid $2 a day. We have highly specialised industry. We are poised to do it. All it requires is regulatory and legislative changes, governments to sit back, get out of the way, get rid of the red tape and the green tape and just let business do what it's good at, and that is helping build employment, helping build industry without government subsidies.
Yeah, what a lot of Australians don't realise is that we have a nuclear reactor in this country for research and medical purposes. It's in the suburbs of Sydney. We store low and medium level waste there. I've been there. I've spoken to the chief officer there, and he said the new level pebble reactors basically would have to defy the laws of physics in order to create a meltdown or create a scenario where, you know, it was a 3 Mile Island or a Chernobyl. Technology has moved on. Nuclear is actually the answer to Australia's energy needs. Is that something that you think we need to get out there to the public as well as our politicians? That
20 megawatt reactor at Lucas Heights saves lives. Now, anyone who's ever had cancer would have radionuclides generated from that reactor. You cannot object to nuclear energy if you've had cancer treatment. It's just not possible to do it. That reactor was built in the bush, no suburbia around it. Suburbia's now crept up to it. It had to be built close to an airport so we can get these medical isotopes to nearby countries and to Western Australia and elsewhere in Australia. That reactor is extraordinarily safe. We already have the people and the technology to run reactors. So if you want to object to nuclear energy, you have to say, I am never, ever, ever going to accept treatment in a hospital for my cancer. If you want green power, then if you're on a life support machine, that machine should be turned off when there's green power coming down the line, and if there's coal coming down the line, turn it back on again. That is the hypocrisy that we see from these Greens sitting in cities trying to finger wag at us and tell us how to live our lives or how much meat to eat or what gender our pet budgerigar should be.
Ian Plimer, you've given us a lot to think about tonight. Thanks for joining me on Bernardi. I really appreciate it.